What children's classroom behaviour is really telling you. So, the minute you say that it's possible that teachers could contribute to poor behaviour, people get very upset with you. Say, you're blaming me for my children's behaviour. But that's not the point. We all contribute to each other's behaviour in many ways, all the time. And the other thing about this aspect of being a teacher is that the one thing over which you have most control is your own behaviour. You might not have control over the curriculum or how you're asked to mark or what Ofsted do to you, but you do have control over your own behaviour. So, some of the ways that your behaviour might influence the behaviour of your children are things like winding them up. So you don't even realise you're doing it, but you say to them, right, we're going to do something really exciting in class today. Who's excited? And before you know it, the children are going a bit psycho. And it's the way that you've used your voice or the way that you've presented the lesson which has wound them up to this fever pitch. Now, sometimes that might be your intention. It might be a great thing to do. But other times, it might be problematic. Something else we can tend to do is we forget about how it feels to be a child, how it feels to take in lots of information verbally. So we talk on beyond the point at which the children are actually listening. Now, this isn't to say that teacher talk is a bad thing. We have to talk to our children to explain things to them. But what isn't such a good idea is talking on and on and on and on beyond the point where they've stopped listening. So get them up, get them active for a moment, then sit them back down again. But don't flog a dead horse. So some of the key signs to look out for are the ones where behaviour is telling you something about the child's learning. So if a child seems to find it impossible to focus, that could be telling you something about the way they process information. If a child is constantly going off task, constantly all the time unable to stay focused, that could be telling you something, for instance, about SEND. If a child is constantly getting into arguments with other children, perhaps that's telling you something about their social and emotional development. All behaviour communicates to us. It tells us something about the person who's behaving in that way. The smaller the children are, the less able they are to articulate what they're really feeling. And so often the behaviour is the result of an unmet need. So over the years, I've seen all kinds of behaviour, believe me. Once I had a child who he'd come into the classroom and he'd focus for about maybe 10 seconds. And then he'd not only lose focus on his work, but he'd be up out of his seat and he'd be wandering around the room. Now, he wasn't one of those children who wandered around the room causing trouble. He was just wandering around the room saying hello to his friends. He seemed very sort of disengaged and unable to focus on anything. When we dug really deeply into what was going on, we discovered a couple of things. First of all, he had some significant issues with literacy. So as school requires you to read, to write, to be able to communicate, he was really struggling with school as a whole. And then the second thing we discovered was he wasn't really getting a chance to make himself known at home. So he needed somebody to pay him attention. And once we started paying attention to him for positive things, that really helped to boost his confidence. So there are some signs that can be particularly easy to misread. I think where a child is refusing to do things, that can be a real point of tension between the teacher and the student. So the child point blank refuses to do the work that you ask them to, or they're defiant when you ask them to move from one place to another in the classroom. Now, it can be incredibly easy for the teacher to interpret that as something very personal. They're refusing to do that for me, when actually there may well be an underlying issue there going on with behaviour. So it could be, for instance, pathological demand avoidance. It could be something to do with ADHD. It could even be something to do with the child's home situation. The minute you start interpreting it as being something to do with you personally, that's when problems tend to arise.